All right. Well, let's start with your why for competing in HYROX or any of the sports you do. What's the motivation, the why behind it?
So my why for competing in general in sports is I always like to, explore my capabilities in, of course, a physical, but also a mental matter. I really like, pushing my limits and kind of, setting different targets, even mentally or for a specific race or for like a physical performance and, trying to reach them. And it makes me feel like very, like I can do almost anything when I kind of challenge myself this way. And then also just, to have a healthy body and, enjoy training and enjoying the community, the different sports offer and the different experiences. I think I'm a little in love with like the athlete life that I have done for some year, with OCR first and now HYROX. So all that part probably is my why.
Okay, great. What's a mental target that you would sometimes have in an event? Do you see how much you can suffer? Is that the target?
The funny thing is I do have some different mental strategies, but one of them is actually what I call exploring the pain. So it's kind of like, for example, when you stand at the wall balls towards the end and you're starting to feel a lot of pain, it can be like, okay, I feel the pain in my arms, but like, how is the pain feeling? What is it that's kind of, cramping or where is it it's burning and how? So I almost like mentally block myself a little bit by, trying to go into exploring the pain and trying to maybe make a little thought process about, being in this pain and maybe being like, okay, maybe it is okay or it is just painful and but how does the pain feel? So sometimes those kind of things is kind of like, testing the different levels or like limits mentally. I kind of like of course, also with race strategies or like things like that is also some mental goals that are good for me sometimes. Can I stick to my own race plan and can I not get caught up, in maybe trying to catch people or other things for the different races, of course, depending on what event you're doing and stuff like that. So things like that can be small challenges mentally for myself that I give. Yeah.
I like that. Well, I've spoken with a few people in here about what they think about during a HYROX race and when it gets really hard, and a few people have mentioned that not having a judgment of the pain,
Mhm.
and like observing it, kind of like what you were just saying, and almost becoming curious about it as opposed to, oh, I hate this pain.
Like,
It's
"Oh,
more,
this is horrible." It's more like, "How is it actually feeling?" Okay, it is hurts, but, like, how is the feeling? Just, like, trying to judge it, but, like, as you say, objectively instead of like, "Oh, this burning feeling is horrible." More like, "Okay, it's a burning feeling. Okay, but how is it burning?" And just trying to ask these, maybe a little weird questions, but it can actually help you a lot when you're, in the pain zone because doing a full HYROX race, no matter like what level you do it, there will be times where it will be painful. Uh, I haven't at least met anybody yet that's been like, "Oh, that was a walk in the park." I would love to do that again. I think everybody has kind of goes through a process when they do
yeah,
HYROX.
yeah. Um, Talking of which, we're recording this a few days after Hong Kong,
Mhm.
where you qualified for the World Championships, the elite race at the World Championships. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yes.
Um, how was the race, and how are you feeling now? Do you recover well from a high rocks?
Um, well, usually I recover a bit better than this race, but I actually got a bit sick after this race. I think my body just was like drained. Yeah. So so after this race, I've had to give myself, a little extra days.
Mm.
I have had a lot of competitions race recently because I did Stuttgart, then I did Hamburg, which was maybe 2.5 weeks ago. No, 3 weeks. So it was very close to the actual Hong Kong race, and then all the travel planning. And I also had a training camp and the Ripple project that I've been doing on the side. So there's just been a lot of things. So I think once I finally kind of crossed that finish line in the Hong Kong race, my body was like, "No more, please. I need a break, please." But that's also what I do have right now. I was supposed or considering to do a race here in Dubai on Saturday, but I'm not gonna do that. Yeah, I'm just gonna give my body some well-deserved rest and peace, and it was go sunbathing or eat some, I don't know, ice cream instead. I think it's a little bit.
Nice. Well deserved. Well deserved. So we'll talk a bit more about HYROX in a little bit. So for people who don't know, tell us a bit about your sporting background from like a young age. What were you doing?
Yes. So from a young age, I did handball for many years, which is like the primary sport in Denmark, where I come from. And I think like I've always, I have a quite active family. My parents has always done some kind of sports. And one thing they always told me or told us as kids was like, we always had to do one sport. So if we didn't want to do handball or want to be like, no, that's not for me, then we just have to find something else. So I think I've done 6, 7, 8 different sports when I was younger, from like handball, volleyball, indoor floor hockey, soccer, swimming, gymnastics, like all different kind of things. But handballs was like my main sport, or what I did the longest at least. And then when I went into uni, that was where I did have some time in high school though, between 4 to 5 years, where I did almost no sports and just, was young and just, did what I needed. And maybe I went to the gym once a week or something, but like had a very traditional youth and like maybe a semi-active childhood, with just liking to be outside also. And then, it more started around uni that I really got into more fitness, running, did some half marathons, trained at this Atlantic training center, which was some really, really tough people doing these high intensity classes of 1 hour, just like all out, no break. You couldn't drink water, you couldn't do anything. You were just like dying for 1 hour. So like just surviving one of those classes, I feel like made me quite tough. And then from there, OCR started. That's like the primary sport I've been doing the last almost 10 years, since 2014. Yeah. And now the last 2-ish years in and out of HYROX, and now the last 3, 4 months, a lot HYROX. So let's see.
Okay, nice. When was it you feel like your fitness really started to change? Was it like that Icelandic gym, that sort of period of time?
Yeah, I would say it definitely gave me like some toughness. I kind of found out when I was in that Icelandic gym, it was kind of like, it wasn't an elite training facility, but still it was like either you really like to be pushed quite hard, or people were like, this is a little too much for me, right? And I just kind of really got into that grind. I really loved it also because it was quite efficient. It was like 1 hour, but I was like, I really felt like I only needed to go that 1 hour 3 times a week, and my shape was actually getting really good. And I just, of course, got a lot of high intensity in, but that was also when I didn't do that much training before it. But I think my fitness really peaked, probably around, between 14 to 18, 2014 to 2018. That's when I really started to pick up on running. And I was like running different half marathons and just, getting more and more into that, and just getting more and more into training and like kind of adding on layers all the time. And then in 18 was also the first time where I kind of went more all in on sports. So that's when I, instead of having a full-time job or full-time study, I actually only worked 50% of a full-time job to then be an athlete besides that, right? So that was like where I felt like I really put extra time in, because the volume of training and the need of recovery, and also a little bit of sponsor traveling, these things kind of kicking in. So that was like where it became very serious for me around the start of 18. But of course, I've also done OCR there for a couple of years, won some different things. I could kind of see the prospect, but I felt like I was stagnating a bit, and I knew if I wanted, to continue on like the curve up, which I guess as many athletes you like to see progression in your training and your results and all this, I felt like I needed to do something, because working full time back then with all the different things I did and the travel was really hard. It's not impossible. You can definitely do it. But like, if you really want to be among the best of the best, it is 100% like an advantage that you have more time to do these other things also.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to ask you actually about like, you're a Red Bull athlete, which presumably has played a part in helping to to sort of live that lifestyle.
Yeah.
What's it? What I think people are like kind of curious what it means to be a Red Bull athlete. What's that experience and process like? How did it come about?
Yeah, so it's kind of like in 2006 or 17, Red Bull wanted to host a OCR event in Denmark. So it's kind of like Red Bull has the global office, and then they have all the like each country has like Red Bull Denmark, Red Bull Sweden, Red Bull UK, and they have like local athletes in that country, and you have to be like either a performance athlete, which means you want to be the best within, a specific sport, or you can be like more like content storytelling athlete that makes these like really big projects and stuff. But then because they wanted to have an OCR event, they were quite excited in having a good OCR athlete. And at that time in Denmark, I was the best female OCR athlete out there, and they really liked my profile. So then the Danish office sends the profile to the headquarters, and then the headquarters kind of uses almost 1 year to then judge you on your results. And that was in 2018. And that year I came second at the World Championships in the 15K in OCR, which was like the best results that any person from Denmark had ever had in such a big event. And not that long time after that, they signed me as an athlete in the end of 18. But before that, I was kind of like, helping a little with the event and this Friends of Red Bull, doing a little bit of things with them. But then actually getting from that to the actual athlete contract, that's where the big difference is. And as soon as you're in as an athlete, it's, of course, really cool because they support you, of course, financially and with different projects like the rope climb project I did, and just now the world's toughest playground. But also they have a training facility in Austria that you can go to for rehab and like maybe talking to coaches or mental coaches and a lot of these things. So they also, when you're in as a performance athlete and not as a content athlete, it's kind of like they really focus on what can we do to make your performance better. And I think that's very unique for a brand, that it's really like, what can we do? Like, what is it you need? Okay, you need a mental coach because you're struggling right now. Then that's like what we help you with besides the other things. And you can go there, to Austria and kind of get an assessment of you as an athlete, like from getting your blood work to getting, I had a shoulder injury just recently, and they helped me, really fast get over that shoulder injury and kind of figure out how to work with, making that better. So also when you have these things, they kind of help you to recover faster or like get more into it. So it's much more than just, the money. It's very much like a family and a network, and like they take really good care of like helping the athletes perform, because of course they also want to have the best athletes in the world. So, helping them get better faster is good for everyone. So yeah, so that's very cool.
Nice, yeah, very cool. Does it come with a pressure?
I would say yes. It's become better for me now, but when I first got signed as an athlete, I thought they were stupid. No, I was like, what do you mean? Like me? No. I was looking at these people like jumping from cliffs and stratosphere and like doing all these really crazy things. I was like, that's like, I can't. But then I also found out that like a lot of those athletes are the one that has these really big content ideas, but they don't need to perform in the Olympics or perform at World Championships and these things. And then they have the performance athletes. So it also kind of understood like, well, what they wanted from me was to be the best within OCR. So it wasn't like competing with people jumping off cliff diving or doing all these crazy things. So it's always like pushing your own limits. So when I kind of, found out that, I got, more and more, calm about it. And now I also accept it because it's a little funny. Sometimes I joke about that I'm their relatable athlete. And I know maybe some people look at me like, no, you're not that relatable. But I would say maybe compared to jumping off, a cliff, then seeing me do pull-ups in 1 or 2 fingers is maybe something content people look at home and they're like, okay, maybe I'll try it. Maybe I can do 1 or 2. So it's kind of like I'm a little more close to, giving small challenges and different things that people can try at home. Some can do them, but also sometimes a lot of the things I do are a little harder than they look. So I kind of feel like I have become this, profile for them where I'm kind of the relatable athlete. But I have learned to love being that, actually. So in the start, I was like, oh, I'm not as cool as everybody else. I can't jump off cliffs or buildings. But I mean, it doesn't really matter because, then I can do something else and, maybe be a little more relatable in other essences. Yeah.
A couple of things you have done with them, though, which you touched on, are the world's highest rope climb. But let's start with that. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, it has been beaten though since, but the moment it was, yes. So it was like the tallest rope climb done from a female, but it was also the tallest rope climb ever done where you started in water. So I was like swimming in Copenhagen in like the big city center, and then I climbed up to the roof of the Danish Opera House. So it's like the Copenhagen Opera House is one of the most, for me and also for many in Denmark, like prestige buildings there, is really cool. It has this roof that kind of sticks out all the way like over the water. And then I just had this idea that I've looked there that I wanted to do a rope climb, at this opera house. And then one year, because we pitched the idea a little bit back, then my athlete manager called me. He was like, we're doing the cliff diving this year, where people jump out, and they're like, guess where we're doing it? And I was like, opera house. And he's like, yes. Then they were like, perfect, let's do, because then Red Bull ended up having the whole opera house building for 2 days, right? Which is like, when are you going to get that? And then we did the project where then swam, climbed 28 meters, all self-sufficient with like this little basic safety, people that know that in the climbing world. So you kind of like, you're doing your own safety. So you don't have like somebody standing on top pulling you up, but you're kind of having your own safety on the rope. And then, all the way to the top of that. And then, of course, being drenched in water, which was very OCR because, when we do OCR races, you go through water, mud, and all these things. So it kind of added on some hardness to doing the actual rope climb. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Mm.
Was it hard? Was it really hard?
It was really, really hard. And especially because like doing it all self-supported with the Prusik is kind of like you have to push a rope on the rope, so you can't really do these big, nice CrossFit looking, movements as you usually can. And I don't know, for people that climb ropes, like the higher you get up on the rope, the more heavy it becomes in the bottom. So kind of like it gets harder and harder to actually lock your feet on the rope because the rope just weighs so many kilos. Like in the start, it's really easy to do this, but in the end, you just kind of have to cliff it almost like, a strict pull towards the end, which made it like quite fatiguing. Towards the end, so there was a lot of like small extra elements in it that was, But I think if like, because now the record has been beaten, but it was also, not self-sufficient support. It wasn't in water and all these other things, but you can always, art stuff. But I was like, I think I could definitely climb a little higher if, there was like either the rope is lifted up in the bottom because then it's easier to do the lock, or you do like the external support, because if you do the external support, you can do these really big moves, which makes you climb 2 meters for every move instead of what I did, which was maybe a bit more than half a meter every time, right? So there are these, small tweaks you can do. So maybe it'll be a challenge in the future, but let's see. I also have other weird projects in mind, so we never know.
I think it's a bit like you were saying, like they're a relatable athlete and people can look at it and think, yeah, I could do that.
Yeah.
But and I think because you make it look so easy, that I think it's like one of them, like if you actually come to try it, like you realize just how difficult it is.
I would say I would not expect many to be able to do. Like I had to train a long time for the rope climb technique, and also just like the fatigue in the forearms and like the amount of pulling and pull power. Like I was up to doing maybe 28 kilo 1 rep max as like added weight to my 1 rep max pull-ups, and I think I can maybe do like 4 or 5 strict pull-ups with 20 kilos on. Like that was around the strength that I needed in pull power, right? So it was very explosive and very, like my upper body was really strong for this, and the grip for the rope. project. So it was like, yeah, you have to be up around that, you know, that additional extra weight for your pull-ups, and of course the grip endurance. So it's combo. Yeah.
Another one that you made look easy, it definitely wasn't, is the world's toughest playground.
It was so hard. It was fun. It was really, yeah, that was, it was, I love the project and I love, the end of it, but the journey was like, yeah, it was really tough. It's kind of also a project we have talked about a long time, and like actually, of course, figuring out from starting to be like, okay, because I've won a lot of things in OCR. So what we wanted to was like, how do I give myself like the ultimate challenge? If I could do some kind of distance or something, like what would be, what I would see. And I really wanted it to have all the true elements of OCR, but also making it scenic and, a little fun and with some, added elements in it. But of course, like every single obstacle had to be designed and tested and trying different things and like the order of them and just like the height of everything. And it was long. I got injured 3 times during the project, like just on falling in like crazy ways down from things, and like things were built and the ramp was absolutely horrible because it was kind of bending out. So if you didn't like catch the top of the ramp, instead of you sliding down a ramp, you just fell directly like 1.5 meter, bang, and then you slide it down, right? So it was kind of, there were some really, really high risk elements in the track. And I think it was around maybe the 10th or 12th time that I actually made a full run, like during the course. And with a full run, it was still some small, adjustments or restarting. But like before I actually got like a clean full run, which was 2.5, almost 3 weeks into that 4-week period we had of filming it, right? So it was, it was quite late that everything aligned. But then when the pressure got more and everything, it was like my body was like, it's now or never. And then that final day we had of filming where I had to fly to Austria the same evening, I did like a full run on it 4 times where everything went more or less perfectly, right? So that was also a bit like, why or how, but sometimes the body just does things. And
So that was the sort of job spec, if you like. Was it Red Bull said you literally design the world's toughest OCR course that you could? Was that what that they gave you to do?
Yeah, exactly. It was kind of like the hardest challenge for myself, but also, so again, you can always like world's toughest. I think for me, it was like my toughest challenge. I mean, I think in OCR, it really had a very good like, mix of everything. So it was obstacles that's never been seen before. It's obstacles that I have struggled with, during my OCR career. So there was also some like history and like building some of the things, but building them harder than at the actual race, building them taller, adding extra elements to them, and just like everything, just pushing it up, and then condensing the amount of running in between. So the obstacles just came really frequently compared to in an actual race where you maybe have 25 obstacles on 5 kilometers, where you had 11 on 300 meters. But without it being the 100-meter ninja course that we've seen, because the ninja course only has grip ninja things where it was really important. It had elements of something really heavy, which OCR requires, and the balance elements, and it has the very technical things, and like it needed to have all the aspects and not only being like a Ninja Warrior track. Because the running needed to still be very important, and the strength elements also, because that's kind of what makes it different from a Ninja Warrior thing, where you see people doing something really hard, but then they stop, right? And they're like pounding their underarms and they're breathing and taking a break, and then they go, right? Where this is kind of more supposed to be very flowy and like one, full.
Yeah. And I should say, for people listening, they can see it on your Instagram account.
Yes, they can. Or on the Spanish Instagram account, where it's apparently become very, Red Bull Spain's Instagram account went crazy on that account. So
Oh, really?
yeah. Yeah, it was like, I don't know, 30 million views or something. It was like insane. Yeah, it was.
Nice.
And okay, this is stupid, but Channing Tatum, he shared it in his story. With
I saw it.
did you see?
Yeah. And
I
I,
don't know
I,
why
I,
I said that, but it's kind of it's just a funny, element to a big thing. So yeah.
yeah. And I should say, as like I said already, like you make it look easy. Obviously, you've said how hard it is, but you can see in the comments, like anyone that like truly understands how hard it was, like they're like, "That's incredible what you've just done." You know,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What attracted you to it? Like OCR has been a major part of your sporting career. What
Mm.
attracted you to it?
To OCR?
Yeah,
Well, I think like I've always liked the playful element that OCR have. It's kind of like when I was a kid, I always loved, in the playground, crawling around on things. I always climbed in trees when I was little or climbed in different things. Like my parents had to get me down on things. So I think just like, I feel like it's a quite natural way to move your body, like navigating terrain. Sometimes you have small swimming sections. Sometimes I like the outdoor element. And then, these kind of the playfulness of just training on rigs and doing some of these, obstacles that you can like switch around and then you do different grips and then you kind of just, do these small different things that makes you better. But sometimes it just feels like you're playing around and like hanging and doing these monkey business thing or whatever you call it, right? So it's kind of like an adult playground. And I think that's also why we use the word playground in the end, because for the Red Bull project, because I've always felt and always said it's sometimes there's like something with OCR that just reminds me of just like an adult playground. And there's like no judging on like, oh, you can't be muddy, you can't be sweaty, it's just like you can do what you want and it doesn't matter. So I think I like that. It's kind of freeing. So yeah,
yeah.
that's
Do you get that? Do you get that same feeling at all from HYROX? Now you're like a little bit more focused on that. Do you find the same enjoyment in it?
I will say what I really like about HYROX, which is quite different from OCR, is I really love like the standardization, because that's been one thing for me, especially also when you're a competitive athlete, which has been really hard in OCR, because then I come to a race and I think I'm prepared for it. And then they decided that the course is going to be 400-meter extra long this day, or they decided that all the walls they were going to put in there, they're not going to be there anyway. And it says it's going to be a really hard rig. And then it's like, oh, then I should have done, more grip stuff, or then I shouldn't have practiced the walls, or then I should have worked more on my 1K running instead of my 1 mile run. So some of these elements sometimes has been, a little hard to sometimes readjust your training. It's just been like, then you have to run a sand in a desert, then you have to run up a mountain, then you have to run flat. And it's just like, sometimes it's been a lot, which has also been hard to prepare for. And you really had to try to find your niche, but even that in itself has been hard because there are so many different races out there. So the thing about HYROX that it's the same no matter where you come. And my favorite part of running is running flat. Unlike if I could just be on a running track, I would do that. So I also don't know sometimes with OCR why, because so much of it is also the elements of the terrain in itself. But that hasn't been like my favorite part of OCR. So I really like, and I really like the grindiness of HYROX. And I think I like the length a lot. What I've done in OCR has been a little shorter, but I think that like 1 hour-ish grind is just like, because you really still have to dig deep. So I think that's added like another element that I've really, been, attracted to somehow, instead of like the little, like even shorter OCR events, because I usually been most competitive in the 3 kilometers. So there's a short distance and a standard, and the standard is 15 and the short is 3 kilometers. And it's the 3 kilometers I've been world champion at 2 times and European championships two times. So it's kind of like, that's been my main distance, but it's a maximum 20-minute effort. So that's quite different from a HYROX.
Yeah.
There's different elements I like, but I do miss the outdoor though. Sometimes the intensity of the venues, but then on the other hand, it's very, easy to follow along. I like that it's, more spectator friendly. I like that, you're kind of hyped up all the time when you're on a HYROX venue, where sometimes in OCR you just run up a mountain and then it's just you dying by yourself for 4 kilometers, and then you come back to the venue and then there are people, right? But there's a lot of like switching on and off, when HYROX you're kind of just in it all the time, which of course is another mental way of being in a race. But yeah, it's yeah, I think I also like that. It's kind of like you need to be
Yeah.
on all the time. Even though it's hard when you stand on a ski erg, hating your life, and people are this close to you and like, come on. It's like, I can't go any faster. I'm trying, and you can't like escape anywhere. You're just like right there, and people are just so close. That's a little intense for me. Some of the first HYROXs, I was like, this is too much for me. I can't take it. I'm used to just like can disappear in the forest and I can't go anywhere. But now there's also some things I love about it. So it has its pros and its cons.
It is nice having support during our HYROX race, but when you're on those ergs, I'm just like, leave me alone. It's fine. I can do this on my own.
It is really hard, and be like, faster. I'm like, I am supposed to not be fast on this one. This is my rowing. This is my break. Give me a break.
What's the like you mentioned earlier? You've sort of been doing a bit of both, like OCR and HYROX, and now you're a little bit more all in. Is it fair to say you're all in on HYROX now? Or?
Yeah, I will say that, especially now, also with the qualification, I think. So I have been like struggling a little bit about finding, not the love for OCR, but I also think when you just been in a sport and you have won a lot of things, and like it's just, been a lot of pressure many years. And what's nice about HYROX is that sometimes you're chasing a specific time, when OCR is really hard to do that because all the courses vary. So a lot of the time, what you're chasing are your competitors, which means that I have also for a long time been like the pinnacle of like the one to beat, which of course is nice to be that person, but it's also hard over time. That is always like, because you can be like, oh, I put this time on the 3K course. That's really cool. So people end up comparing themselves to me, which of course I love, but sometimes it's also just hard, mentally over time. And then, yeah, I kind of try to combine HYROX and OCR, because OCR is more the summer, HYROX was maybe more the winter, but it's, even though they both have compromised running, I would still say that the skill set is like, I just needed much more strength. And I've always been in the strong end for OCR, but then when I came to a HYROX race, I was kind of like the little skinny runner compared to the rest. I almost felt, I was like, this is different. Usually I'm like the very big jack person at an OCR race compared to all the more small running stature, which is maybe a little more how the OCR runners are. But yeah, so I just needed to up my strength, and I just like, it was, and also needed to prepare for an endurance event that was longer than 20 minutes. Like I did really well in my HYROX races, but after half an hour, I was dead, So, and, kind of figuring out the strength element and just like totally burning myself out on the sleds really early in the start. So like there was a lot of things for me where I was kind of like, oh, it's almost the same. I can do that. But then like, and especially not with how the competition is now, it's just so intense or so much. So I have been wanting to train more for it. And then naturally it just made really good sense. Also because I actually had a shoulder injury, which has prevented me from training a lot on rigs and a lot on OCR. So like doing really straight arm movements, like hanging stuff, is not ideal. There are not those movements in HYROX. So I was kind of like, maybe, can do some prepping for that. And then, I just got really strong over the last 3-4 months. And that has just given me that extra edge that I maybe needed for the HYROX races, because my running has been there, but my like power, strength, power, endurance has needed to go up. Right. So it was maybe smaller things. I had the fundament for sure. So it's not like I had done no training and now I'm just really good at HYROX, right? It's kind of, I of course had a really good fundament, but I had to change up some things that I just wasn't willing to do earlier because I was competing at such a high level in OCR. But now I kind of like accepted, like, it's okay that now this is the focus, and I will not be able to go, be top 5 in an OCR event if I keep on training like that, and that's also okay. So yeah, so that's what I'm doing now. And now, because yes, I had the project, but that is done. I will say from now, like after, like even the Red Bull project was done just 1 week before the Hamburg race, but still since the Hamburg race, it's been all in on HYROX, but that's also been 4 weeks. But I would say the last 3-4 months, I did more strength training, right? So I have, of course, done things. So yeah, there's not only, but yeah, I am excited what will happen when I train even more for it. So definitely a lot of things I still can, improve. So that's good.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like it's coming good very quickly. So you've done a couple of 102 somethings in Stuttgart, and is it Stuttgart and Hamburg?
Yeah.
And then obviously, like the Hong Kong race where you qualified for the World Series. It's
Yeah.
like it's a relatively short period of time. You've been all in, but it's happening very quickly. So your potential and what else you can do is exciting to think about.
Yeah, it is quite exciting, because there's still, like, sometimes when I talk about, maybe with some of the other elite athletes or other people that are training a lot, and I'm maybe explaining some of my strength training, a lot of it has also been a little bit rehab, of the shoulder and some of these things where they're like, oh, you're not training. So, but I am like, I'm working with a coach from the Red Bull Performance Center, because I've been there for testing. So they've also like trying to figure out, okay, what is it like you need with the injury? So a lot of my strength training has really been, of course, focusing on implementing some of the HYROX movement, but also just like getting the body more aligned with, like, so there are definitely things I can work on from now on to like be more HYROX specific. So because right now I just feel like every time I add those wall balls, I'm just like eating myself. I think it's more mental reason why I'm so good at it, because it's just pain and just surviving. So yeah.
I was going to ask, like, what have the main changes in your training been so far? And I appreciate, like you said, it's
Yeah.
been more strength, but can you be more specific? Has it just been like you've been working on sleds or overall strength?
100%. So like I have gone from maybe having one full body strength session a week for my OCR, and then besides that I had maybe 1 or 2 pull grip things. So that can either be going for a bouldering gym or doing just like semi-high volume of pull-ups or different, like a lot of pull. But then with HYROX is much more pushing. So I had to like change a lot of like my upper body training to involve more pushing movements. And from going to have one like full body maintenance strength sessions, I added in like 2 lower body sessions, which were quite focused on like building, of course, some like strength endurance. So I did do some sled movements. So like so I did like some weighted step ups and like hip thrusters and squats and these seated squats, a lot of these like kind of heavy movement, but sometimes also adding into the really heavy sleds as like a part of one of my leg strength like exercises, instead of them being like a basic squat, then go in and push a really, really heavy sled and then take 2-3 minutes break and then use that as one of your like heavy leg strength movements. So I would definitely say that I have done way more strength training for my legs, and also that my upper body training has gone from being mainly pulling exercises to involve a lot of, also pushing things, which has made me stronger for the burpees and maybe a little bit for like the ski erg or some of the other movements also. So I would generally say like, so it's almost been like 3 strength trainings a week instead of 1. So that in itself has been a quite high increase in my strength training. And then my running had changed up a bit, where usually I have like 2 quite hard running sessions a week, and then like 1 quality run also. So it's actually 3 semi-hard running sessions, where now is only 2 hard running sessions. But then I add in some, not a sim, but like some kind of sessions where I do running combined with like some compromise running or something like that. So instead of having like more quality sessions with just running. I have one of my sessions being like a combined run into burpees, lunges, something like that. So that's one of the things I have done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are they longer running sessions that you're doing, or are you doing more mileage because it's now an hour rather than like 20 minutes?
Yeah, I would say they're longer for sure now in general. Also because like I talked a lot with my running coach about like now we're not preparing you for a 20-minute event. Now we're preparing you like for a 1 hour event. So of course also a lot of my threshold sessions have maybe been even longer than usual. But of course we also had to try to also not make my volume be put up too much. So it's also kind of, scooching around the different kind of what do you call it, like intensities for the different sessions.
Yeah. And the sort of two quality sessions that you're doing, like
Mm,
the non-hierarchy, is that
mm,
more like a threshold running? Are you going
yeah.
beyond threshold in some runs, or?
No, I would say one of them is a pure threshold session. So sometimes it's even like a little low threshold because then like the more sim thing is maybe a little more like threshold. And then the quality is just like, yeah, often like faster than 5K periods, like more interval sprints or like a really harder quality session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
What's your take? Like, presumably part of the reason that you're sort of coming into HYROX or focusing more on HYROX is like the growth of the sport and the direction of the sport. Are you like, what's your take on like the evolution of the elite side of things? Are you like excited about that setup and where it's going?
yes, definitely, definitely. I would say that like it's also really nice that I think they're doing a really good job in like gathering the competition the same places. I feel like that's like something that has been a little hard some years for OCR. It's kind of like it's important to gather the competition more, closer. So I feel like that's like something that's very ideal.
So you mean like uh, the major events are gathering like the 15 best athletes
Exactly.
in one place at one event? Is that what you like about it?
Exactly. I really like that, the elite and like the competition doesn't get dispersed too much. So you kind of like when you're actually competing, you do compete against some of the best because I feel like that's really good that you're kind of like gathering people at the same events. But also when you are at these majors, I also feel like you're very good taken like care of as an athlete. They kind of make sure that it's really good live stream and like there's some money for everybody that's competing and they do a lot of interviews. I think they're really good at like creating good also media behind the athletes, which in the end also helps them a lot. Yeah. So I feel like they're good like that. And it's of course it's still 15 isn't a lot of athletes. That's the only thing I'm thinking sometimes that, it maybe be cooler with elite 20 or 30 or something because it's still very few people and the sport is so big and the competition is so hard. Like you see some one like Graham Halliday that
Mhm.
kind of came to Hong Kong on a wild card almost, and then he actually ends up getting qualification. And I mean, there are some of these people out there which kind of like maybe deserves to be there, but it's really hard. And also for me, even getting into the major right now when everything is time based and has to, are you lucky to find a good venue and all these things? It can just sometimes be hard. So maybe if they made it a little broader, it would be, yeah, a little easier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I agree, but funnily enough, I read this morning or yesterday that CrossFit are actually moving in a direction where like they've always had 40 individual athletes at the CrossFit Games, and they've announced that now it's going to be 30. So they're obviously cutting down for some reason as well. But yeah, I agree.
But it's interesting. Yeah. I feel like 30 is a good amount because that's kind of like, I don't feel like you would be leaving anybody out there. But of course, I also see it's like, there's also something in the prestige and it being fewer. So, I mean, it can be many things, but the competition is just so hard now that it's, it could
Yeah,
be something like that. So,
yeah. What do you think is possible for you in a pro race in terms of time?
in terms of time, I would say that I hope to do like 1 and 30 seconds, 1 hour and 30 seconds. That's my goal for this season. I
Okay.
feel like I was a little close actually in Hamburg because I was very stupid. I ran one extra lap.
Oh,
I had a quite good race there. Yeah, and I ran an extra lap, so actually, like, my time was 1:02:46, but, I mean, I could have been, a little
mm,
bit faster, like, maybe 1 minute and something. So, yeah. I'm not sure I'll get sub 1 hour this year, but, I mean, you never know. But, of
never know.
course, overall HYROX goal is kind of like sub 1 hour. That's just, like, such a, cool benchmark. You would wanna do that over time, so, yeah.
Yeah. How about in terms of now you've qualified for the World Championships? Do you have a position in mind for that you think would be a success?
Uh, I I would say top 5.
Hmm.
I would say top 5. Yes. But in the end, I'm always like, I always would wanna win, but, I mean, of course, maybe expecting that the first year is a little high, but that's always like I get competitive with things, so over time, like, that will always be my goal. But, the thing is if it's realistic now or not, but, I mean, that will always be my end goal to be the
Okay.
best.
Uh, I meant to ask when we were talking about your training, what's your like uh, mileage per week? How much distance are you covering in your running?
So it's been a little bit up and down, especially, yeah, but I would say I am satisfied if I'm between 50 to 70. That's like my good point. Yeah, so 50 to 70 kilometers a week is
Okay.
where I would like to be. Yeah,
Okay.
maybe it's like 14 to 16 hours of training.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have a favorite HYROX moment so far?
My favorite timer favorite HYROX moment. I feel like I feel like it's been one of the wall ball battles with Kate Davy at the end, maybe in because and even in one in Hong Kong now, because apparently we're just like so really close and so intense, and it's right at the end, and it's like I can see that I'm catching in, but she's still just that little bit beforehand. So I mean, some of those moments with her and me just like looking a little, out the peripheral towards each other and just having those battles, and we also respect each other a lot as competitors, and like we have different forces during the race, so it's really fun when we race how things
Yeah.
are different. I think like that's been one of my favorite moments, even though it's been very painful also.
Uh, um, a few questions I just want to finish up on.
Yeah, of course.
What's been your best sporting experience ever?
Ever. I would say that is when I won the World Championships in OCR in 2022, in the 3K distance in Vermont in US. I think like it was my first very big title. It was when like there was one competitor that just has been winning for so many years, and everybody was like she's unbeatable, but I was actually the first one to beat her within like a 2.5-3 year time frame where she just hadn't been beaten in anything. And also that race I was actually quite sick leading into it, and I felt like all my preparation was just shit. And then when I actually went to the race, my performance ended up being like one of the best I've ever had. So like that whole roller coaster was just so wild for me, but it was, yeah, it was just a very unique moment, yeah, for me in my career, and yeah, it was kind of like, yeah.
Awesome. How about your toughest ever sporting experience?
Mm, well, there has definitely been many different, but I would say it was also be at one of the World Championships event in London, actually. In 2019, where I did it was actually not the 3 kilometer, but the 15 kilometer that I was leading, which was a little surprising for me. And I had like a really big lead, and then there was this one last technical obstacle that I just couldn't complete, and I just kept on trying and trying and trying, and like the skin came off my hands, and I just like really just kept on, going. But I lost like from getting a lead to getting third place, and yes, third place is okay, but it was just like I could just see, everything there. And I just felt like, the title was mine, but it wasn't. And that just mentally took some time also because I ended up actually getting through the obstacle where I was like, why couldn't you do it, to start it when you were in the lead? Why do you need to wait fucking 8 minutes or something to get through it? So it's just, and that was also where I really started working with mental training and my mental coach, because I think a lot of the blockage was also in my mind, because when I came to this obstacle, I was like, this is the last obstacle and then you're world champion. Like as soon as you've gotten this one, then you're going to be the world champion. And then when I came over, there was like, everything was, like, slippery. Like I couldn't use my hand, just like everything, just like um, I totally just blocked myself. So it was like an interesting journey afterwards, mentally, in like how I then could maybe, work with this part, because I definitely felt like it was my physical abilities. It was more my mental abilities that made me lose that title.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the best piece of advice someone's given you or you've discovered while training for HYROX?
While training for HYROX, the best advice. Why not try it? I don't know. Yes, and I don't know. I think, or just, be willing to like accept the different, like the different things you'll go through in the HYROX. I think is a very good advice. It's kind of like you're gonna have times in the HYROX race where you feel like a fucking champion, but you're also gonna have times like during a HYROX race where you feel like you just want to fucking quit, right? So just like kind of knowing that it's really like this kind of roller coaster that you're gonna go through. But in the end, it will feel great that you accomplished it, even though you probably feel a little shit just as soon as you cross the finish line because you just did 100 wall balls. But kind of knowing what you're getting yourself into, but like that it's kind of fun experience to go through these different modes, or what you call it.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good advice, to just accept whatever comes, even though if it's you feeling like the fucking champ or you feeling horrible, you will experience both. So
Yeah. But don't kid yourself that it's all going to be easy at the start.
exactly.
Yeah. And then finally, if you could plant one idea or piece of advice in the mind of everyone listening, and it could be anything, what would it be?
That's a good question. I should have prepared for that one. Um, I think one thing that I've sometimes had like a motto of a mantra is kind of, I call it to dream upstream, which is kind of, even though things might seem like they're impossible, like maybe it's not a good idea because other people feel like it's a weird path to take, or maybe it's not in the culture to do these things, or maybe they're like, you can always see obstacles for doing things and just, following the stream and doing what everybody else does. But if there's something you're really burning for and something you feel inside is you want to try out, then maybe it's okay to go against, what maybe other people say, if it's something you truly believe inside. And yeah, for example, with me in sport, like my family always wanted me to, be an engineer, and I am an engineer, and I am, got my full university degree, but I actually want to be an athlete. And that's what I ended up doing, even though it maybe wasn't what was in the cards or maybe what people hope it. But in the end, it's what really makes me happy. And I'm going to, use the years while my body can do this to do it. So yeah, so to be brave and do these things, I think is a good advice.
Love it. Love it. All right. Well, awesome. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much. What are your plans now for the next few months in HYROX? Like, obviously you've qualified for the race in June. What's planned between now and then?
It's a good question because I haven't really thought it through, to be honest, but I will definitely do the major in Glasgow because it's quite close to where I live in Copenhagen. I'm a little in doubt with the LA, just because of work, and I have a little bit of work on the side still, and just, the travel, and also having a building block, towards something where maybe, can peak my fitness a little more. So I think, but also doing, the HYROX Copenhagen, I actually like sometimes also just racing a little, not that I want to race every weekend, but also like not having too long periods of time with no races, because I feel like it keeps me, it doesn't have to be a 100% effort at a race, but just, having that feeling of how a full HYROX feels at a venue at where you do everything is good. So also the Copenhagen one I'm gonna do for sure. So
Okay.
maybe do a relay at some times, but I'll figure that out.
And am I right in thinking you're doing the doubles with Sebastian Iversen?
Yeah, I have to cancel that. So
Oh,
yes, but I was supposed to do that, and but there's just a little too much right now. It's really soon. It's supposed to be like in 1.5 weeks, and I am having a little bit of things that my body is telling me not to take too high risks right now. So I would rather just. I have been pushing it a lot with all these things, so it's just we will do a relay, me and Sebastian, but I think it will be the Copenhagen one instead.
okay. Right, awesome. If people want to follow you, find out more about you, where should they go?
Yes. My primary platform is Instagram. So either Mathilde. Yeah, that's the one. So yeah, you can follow me there. That's usually where I post most of my things. Yeah, I also met TikTok, but don't look at that. It's not. It's not ideal. No, it's fine. Whatever people feel like.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you for this. And I'll talk to you again soon.
Yes, thank you, Greg. Thank you for the good questions and for having me on your podcast.